much more corporate kind of Super Bowl environment, which is not the insane fanaticism, crazed, bloodthirsty crowd environment. But still, I can't wait to go. But back to Jay Vargas 7. Just one more game to talk about. Well, although we will talk a little bit about the game yesterday. And then that's it for 4 more years. No more unsophisticated soccer talk for 4 years. But I have enjoyed this. I think anecdotally, I feel like this World Cup so much more than the previous World Cups. Guys that didn't pay attention at all or barely paid attention are initiating conversations about this now. This is not a hard conversation to have with your best friends who are American sports fans. I think, look, it's the time of year. There's nothing else going on. Obviously, if this were being played in October or November or even September, it's not the same thing for all of us because football, American football, would be sort of masking this. But I've enjoyed it. And I do feel like I'm starting to get a little bit of the strategery in the game, the spacing, some of the plays that are run. And I'm not talking about corner kicks or free kicks. The way they work the ball and, in basketball against a defense, one of the things you really like to do, and I'm not talking about iso ball, but you like to move the defense side to side by reversing the ball a few times. Make the defense move, and that'll create an opening for penetration. Penetration that will draw defenders, and then you can kick to somebody else who's now got a wide open look. But you got to get the defense moving with ball reversals or side to side before you can do that, especially against good defensive teams and set defenses. And I see a lot of basketball concepts in soccer. Now, there's not a lot of screening necessarily. I think lacrosse actually is a much better comp to basketball in terms of the way the game is played. There is zone defenses, there are man-to-man defenses, there are screens, there are picks, there are switches. There's a lot of basketball concepts in lacrosse, but I see some of it in soccer too, spacing and creating those opportunities by moving. And that's why sometimes, and I used to get, I was driven nuts by this, when they would advance the ball and all of a sudden they turn around and they kick it all the way back to their own goalie. I still hate that because it's not, this is a terrible analogy, but it used to be my analogy, which is, you just drove the ball from your own 5-yard line into the red zone, and then you decided to snap it to the quarterback and have him run all the way back to the 5-yard line and start again. Of course, it's a terrible analogy because it would be 2nd and 90 or whatever at that point. But I'm starting to kind of understand the idea. We're going to move the defense. We're going to get them tired. We're going to get them to the point where they just make a couple of mistakes with respect to spacing, and they leave that hole, and then boom, boom, and the passing by the elite teams is fun to watch. Man, Messi is something else. I mean, that's obvious. Yesterday's game was not a 17-7 football game. Even now, England sitting on the lead, which I noticed, and I'm sure most of you noticed, even if you're not a soccer person. They got a 1-0 lead at that 55-minute mark, and from minute 56 through minute 92, or through the end of the game, minute 101 or whatever it was, when they got down 2-1, they got aggressive. But they took their foot off the pedal. I saw this analogy. My buddy CJ sent it to me this morning. To explain this to football fans, England went into a prevent defense with a 3-0 lead with 2 minutes left in the third quarter against Joe Montana. Yeah, I get that analogy. You don't have an insurmountable lead at 1-0, although in soccer, 1-0 is probably not equivalent to 3-0 in football. 1-0 in soccer is probably equivalent to 14-0 more times than not. 3-0 is 1-0 in soccer is much more insurmountable than 3-0 in football. Unless you want to say, well, it was a low-scoring game, terrible weather, bad field conditions, whatever. We can come up with all of the scenarios for that. But that's what England appeared to do. And the coach is being absolutely skewered, of course he is, by the English press. Their opportunity, they were, at that point, at the 85-minute mark, when Argentina got the game-tying goal, they were probably, from that point on, there was +9 on the stoppage. So they're 14 minutes away from their first World Cup final since 1966. And they did. They sat on the lead. They sat on the lead. They got conservative. And you don't do that against a team who, by the way, was getting a lot of the chances anyway. And just the goaltender came up with some big saves. That was an exciting game. That was an exciting sporting event. And the Argentinians are crazy. We've got some sound from the Argentinian announcer that will play at some point during the show if we can get our audio system to work better, our playback system to work better. But that was the opposite of the day before. And yeah, I mean, I was kind of despite my brother telling me the English would be, I kind of wanted to be in the Meadowlands Sunday with the English fans. I was rooting for them, but really good soccer. So I was thinking about something, actually, in conversation with a very good friend this morning. That was the ultimate in having, essentially defeat snagged from the jaws of victory. Like that, if you were an English soccer fan, that was crushing. You're counting down the minutes until a World Cup final. You're feeling so good, and it's over. So I want you to think about something right now, and I will open up phone lines on this right now at 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. For our sports teams, and, you can make this personal, and it doesn't have to be Redskins, Caps, Bullets, Wizards, Nats, Terps, Hoyas. It doesn't have to be that. It could be if you're a fan of some other great team or other team. But think about the worst, most gut-wrenching loss where you thought it was won. I mean, when we started talking about this earlier, immediately about 3 or 4 games came to mind for me. And I've talked about my number 1 before. And there's a close number 2. But number 1 for me is the 1979 Redskins-Cowboys season finale at Texas Stadium. I think it's the most gut-wrenching loss in franchise history. And there have been many of them over the years. And I've got a list of the Skins' gut-wrenching losses. And it's not just gut-wrenching loss, like, oh, man, I can't believe we lost that game. It is where you felt like it was pretty much over. It was almost over. It was pretty much over. And you were counting it. You had already written W down next to your Washington bet on your bet sheet. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Find that game for me and tell me the time that you were most devastated after you thought victory was in hand and it was snatched away at the end, like it was for England yesterday. For me, 79, Redskins, Cowboys, Texas Stadium. This game is for the division title and the 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. The winner is the favorite to go to the Super Bowl. The loser, if it's Washington, your season's over. You don't even qualify as a wild card. Dallas actually was going to qualify as a wild card with a loss. They were still going to go to the playoffs. Washington's wild card chances were eliminated earlier in the day when the St. Louis Cardinals lost to the Bears by a point differential that made the tiebreaker in the wild card standings go to Chicago. In fact, it was like St. Louis, it was the St. Louis Cardinals, for those of you wondering. The St. Louis Cardinals couldn't lose by more than 43 points, and they lost by 44. And so Washington didn't win that tiebreaker, and they knew, because that game was a 1:00 game, and Washington-Dallas was the final game of the NFL season. There was no Sunday night football back then. So it was December 16th, 1979. It was the 4:00 standalone nationally televised game, as every Redskins-Cowboys game was back then. Every single, just to understand this, pretty much every single Redskins-Cowboys game from 1972 on was nationally televised. It was on Monday Night Football, or it was in that 4:00 window, as a standalone nationally televised game. Yes, there were a couple of 1:00 here and there. And then even through the 80s and 90s, when Sunday Night Football became a big thing, I mean, you still, I think this is true, that still to this day, Washington, Dallas have appeared head-to-head more than any other two teams in prime time, whether that's Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, etc. I think the Raiders-Broncos are really close, but I think Dallas-Washington might still be number one. But in 1979, in that season finale, win or go home, and John Riggins, in the fourth quarter, on a run, bounced it to the outside and outran everybody, because Riggo could fly. We talked about that the other day. Riggo was 6'2", 230, but Riggo had sprinter speed. And Riggo outran the Cowboys secondary, 66-yard touchdown run, and Washington had a 34-21 lead late in the fourth quarter. 13-point lead. You couldn't go for two back then. They had a 27-21 lead when they scored. There was no two-point conversion. Obviously, in today's game, they would have gone for two, and maybe they would have been up 35-21. But they kicked the extra point. They're up 34-21. And literally, with 2.5 minutes to go, with about 3 minutes to go, they had the ball back, and they fumbled. And Dallas took over. Dallas went down and got one score with about 2.5 minutes to go. And then on a 3rd and 2 from their own 30-yard line, Riggins got stuffed in the backfield, forced a punt. Roger Staubach drove him down the field, and with 40 seconds to go, threw a touchdown pass to Tony Hill to give the Cowboys a 35-34 lead. Washington got the ball back again and got robbed at the end, because there was a pass over the middle to Don Warren with 2 seconds to go. They called timeout. The clock ran out. They didn't put the time back on the clock. This was more like soccer back in 1979. The timing was imprecise. It went, you knew how much time was left, but they didn't go to the replay and didn't obviously see Washington calling for a timeout. If they'd gotten a timeout, Mark Mosley would have come on for a 58, 59-yard field goal attempt, and he had the leg back then to do it. So they would have had a chance. That game was the most gut-wrenching, defeat snagged from the jaws of victory loss for any team in my lifetime. That's number one. There's a close number two for me, but that's number one. What's your number one? 301-230-0980. We went from 1 seed and favorite to go to the Super Bowl with 2.5 minutes to go in the game to completely out of the playoffs. Devastating. Season over. Just like that. Roger Staubach. Didn't like him much. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. The worst victory snagged, defeat snagged from the jaws of victory loss for any team you've ever rooted for in your lifetime. We'll take calls on that next. Dave Jagler will join us on the show today. The Nats play-by-play and analyst in the radio booth will join us at 12 to talk about the Nats as they get ready to start post-All-Star break action tomorrow night in Sacramento against the A's. And Ben will join us today because I think he's traveling tomorrow. He'll join us at 12:25. We'll talk about the Wizards and Anthony Davis with him a little bit, but we'll talk Skins as well. Kevin Sheehan Show the Team 980 and the team980.com. Can't hear it.
Staubach lines up under center this time with Springs and Pearson behind him. He throws. Tony Hill got it. Touchdown, Dallas. And now the extra point. Don't forget what's coming. And don't forget either that Washington still has 2 timeouts left.
Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire on the call in late December 1979. The season finale, the last game of the NFL season. Washington had it in the bag, up 13 late in the fourth quarter, and Dallas led by Roger Staubach. 2 long drives, including that capper, a touchdown pass to Tony Hill with 42 seconds to go to knock Washington out of the playoffs altogether. The win would have put Washington with home field advantage and as the 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. That is, for me, number 1 on the all-time loss where defeat was snagged from the jaws of victory. Like what happened yesterday with the English, up 1-0, and Argentina scoring twice in that sport over a 7-minute period. What's that all-time devastating, you had it in the bag, but your team let it get away and you lost? What's that number 1 for you? 301-230-0980. There are others here. I mean, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them for our local teams. Let me just say that I don't have a Caps one, so you can help me with that, Max.
Well, I've got a couple Caps ones.
Well, give me your number 1.
So the number 1, I mean, it's 2009 and 2010 were 2 of the biggest heartbreaks because the Caps were so good.
The Montreal loss.
The Montreal loss is the loss because the Caps were up 3-1 in that series, and then Yaroslav Halak locked in. I mean, the Caps that year were just unbelievable. They won the President's Trophy. They were the first team that wasn't an original 6 team to crack 120 points, which is no team had ever done it before. It was huge. Nick Backstrom, Alex Semin, Mike Green, Alex Ovechkin was at the top of his game at the time. It really felt like that was the year, and then it just all fell apart in 3 games as Yaroslav Halak just locked in.
Yeah, they got halocked. I do remember that very much. That was devastating. And what was the 7th and deciding game? That it wasn't. Did they get shut out in the 7th and deciding game?
I believe it was an overtime loss.
Was it an overtime loss? I don't think game 7 was an overtime loss. I could be wrong.
4 power play opportunities for the Caps. Yeah, it was just a rough game.
Was it an overtime loss?
It was.
Okay.
2-1. 2-1 final score.
2-1 in overtime. Montreal won.
No, it was regulation. I'll keep that. Okay.
Record. Yeah, I didn't remember it being an overtime game. Okay.
Yeah, 2-1.
All right. That's a good one. That's certainly because of the series lead as well. All right. 301-230-0980. We've got phone lines open. I want to know what the equivalent for you was to what English fans are going through, thinking that they are on their way to the World Cup final, and then literally 7 minutes later, 8 minutes later, whatever it was, they're out. For me, Washington's 13-point lead over the Cowboys in the 1979 season finale is number 1. I'll share with you what my number 2 is. I've got a bunch of others that are absolute, examples of it was over, but it wasn't. Including a couple of more Skins Cowboys games. Man, did they and have they played some of the all-time legendary games. From a Cowboys perspective, same thing with Washington. The Monday Night Miracle, the Santana Moss from Mark Brunell twice. That had to be devastating. The Sean Taylor return of the Troy Vincent blocked field goal in 2006. It set up the game-winning field goal with no time left on the clock, untimed down. Yeah. All right, let's start with Joe in Springfield. Joe in Springfield, go ahead.
What's going on? Shout out to Max.
Yep. What do you got, Joe? What's the game that sticks with you? Is you thought it was over and it was devastating when the opponent came back and won?
Kevin, I'm going to say it was the 1999 divisional round when Washington was playing Tampa Bay.
Tampa.
We're up 13-0. We're dominating the defense. I mean, the defense had gotten better as the season went on, and they were shutting down Tampa Bay's offense. But then when John Lynch intercepted Brad Johnson, that got the Bucs back into it. But when we lined up for that field goal, I mean, if not for a bad snap, Kevin, I had confidence in Brett Conway because Brett Conway was accurate all year long.
Yeah.
And if he had made the field goal without the bad snap, we would have played Kurt Warner of the Rams in the NFC Championship. I don't know what the outcome would have been, but it would have been the top two offenses in the league squaring off against each other. It would have been fun to see that. But, yeah, the Tampa Bay loss in 99 was devastating. We had that game up 13-0. We had all the momentum, and then we just lost it. And if not for that bad snap, Kevin, we're talking a whole new different story with an NFC Championship appearance.
I mean, such a sad aftermath with Dan Turk, who rolled the snap back on the what would have been a potential game-winning field goal. Obviously, he died, within a year, I think, after that. And just a terrible snap. Choked on the snap, and that was up 13-0 in the up 13-0, and Brad Johnson, who was definitely hampered with a shoulder injury, threw that pick to John Lynch, and it flipped the game on its side completely. Remember, that was Brian Mitchell's final game as a Redskin. He returned the second half kickoff 100 yards to give Washington a double-digit lead. And to your point, the defense was awesome. Remember, Sean Taylor got booted from that game for spitting at why am I blanking on who he spit at? What helmet did Sean Taylor spit at? What player? I'm blanking. It wasn't Allstott. It wasn't work done. Whatever. But yeah, no, that was a devastating loss, and it certainly seemed as that game was going on that Washington was going to advance to the NFC Championship game. And remember, Joe, Tampa went the following week to St. Louis and lost to the high-flying, greatest show on turf Rams in that first year. 11-6 was the final score of that game. Let's go to John in Virginia Beach. John, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. How you doing, buddy?
Good morning.
Hey, I got three that came to mind real quick. I'm a little bit of a younger fan, but first one that came to mind was in 2017 when we went down to New Orleans, lost a double-digit lead there late in the fourth quarter.
Painful.
It felt like
Painful.
A game that we really needed to have there, and let that one slip away.
Up two touchdowns, lost in overtime, right?
Yep. Second one was just last year against the Bears, another game that just felt like we really needed to have that to keep the season alive, and to let that fumble away at the end, that was certainly tough. And then just a personal one, I'm an ODU alum down here, and we got buzzer beater in the tournament by Butler in the first round. They went on to go to the title game. That was certainly a tough one, but those are the three that quickly came to mind for me.
Yeah, no, those are good ones for sure. The game that you're referring to in New Orleans, that was such a critical game because I believe that's also the game where Chris Thompson broke his arm, and they ended up losing him for the rest of the year. That was really the turning point in the game because a turning point in the season. Because Washington's dead set in playoff contention if they hold on to that lead and Chris Thompson doesn't get hurt. They lose the game, Chris Thompson gets hurt, and I believe that the next game was Thanksgiving night against the Giants that they won. I could be wrong about that. But the season did not end well after it looked promising for a while. Michael Pittman, thank you guys. Michael Pittman, of course, the running back for the Buccaneers in that playoff game. Sean Taylor spit in his face, got ejected. And there was question as to whether or not he would have been eligible to play in the NFC Championship game had they advanced. Let's go to Samaj. Samaj, and just for everybody, and we've got a line open if you want to weigh in at 301-230-0980, off England's devastating loss to Argentina yesterday, where defeat was snagged from the jaws of victory. Give me the example for you, the worst of those kinds of losses for any of your teams where it seemingly was over and won, and then all of a sudden it wasn't? Go ahead, John.
Good morning, Coach. How you doing? Thanks, Max, for taking
John.
my call as always.
Samaj, I'm sorry.
Kev,
Samaj, my fault. Yeah.
That's okay. I heard you. I knew you would get it right.
Well, once I heard your voice, I knew it was
on that note, on that note, we're in the same age group, so
Yeah.
it's all good. So, and that said, dude, I got to take it back to our high school days. The first thing that came to mind, and thanks for clarifying the topic, because I wasn't sure if you were saying local teams or just teams in general. So you clarified it. I appreciate that. So, dude, I got to go back to '82 and the introduction of the world to Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
Georgetown, Carolina, in the Superdome, Fred Brown, and then Mike. That's the number one thought that popped in my head immediately. I'll never forget that. And the second was just last year. I'm a big Canes fan. Outside the Terps football, my other college football team is the Canes in the national championship game. Watching
Yeah, the only thing
Mendoza,
about Georgetown, North Carolina, Samaj, is that the game wasn't won. It was a great basketball game. It wasn't like Georgetown had the game in control and then lost.
No, not in control, but they were up.
Yeah, they were up, and Mike hit the shot, and then Fred Brown, tossed it to James Worthy.
Yep.
At the end.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I'm not. That's a painful loss, no doubt. But that wasn't. We got this game. We've dominated this game, and then all of a sudden it changes at the end, and you go home a loser. Because that was, that started a stretch, by the way, during the '80s of just one incredible national championship game after another. The next year was, Wittenberg, Lorenzo Charles, and then you had '87 was Keith Smart. '86 was the run by Danny Manning to the finals against Oklahoma. Against Oklahoma. Of course, Villanova over Georgetown in '85. Incredible stretch.
I can't speak for you, Kev, but that run to this day is why I still hold on to my college basketball loyalties. My first hoop option. That decade, man. College basketball.
I think a lot of people who became Georgetown fans became Georgetown fans in '82. I think you're 100% right. Maryland fans had been around for a decade. When Lefty got here, he introduced college basketball to this market as a big product, and Maryland was a powerhouse in the 70s, always ranked in the top 10. And then Georgetown, even though John had some success before Patrick got there, he got to an Elite Eight in 1980. But I think that championship game and that championship run in '82 with Patrick as a freshman is the game and the tournament that really got Georgetown into that, not only locally much more followed, but started to become a national brand. Thank you.
No doubt.
Yeah, thanks, Samaj. By the way, yes, I screwed up. My fault. Kevin in Arlington, you're right. I don't know how I didn't get that one right. The Michael Pittman incident was in 2006. When they beat Tampa Bay in the postseason. The '99 game, obviously, Sean Taylor was not on that team. My fault. I'm getting my Tampa playoff games mixed up. Let's go to Tim. Tim in Gettysburg. Give me the gut-wrenching defeat snagged from the jaws of victory loss like England had last night in your life's sports fan rootingdom. Yeah.
Hi, Kevin.
What?
2001, 10-point lead with less than a minute to go.
Yeah, that's on my list.
And was it not the same year that they lost to Duke in the Final Four?
Of course it was.
They were
It
up
was
20 as well.
Yeah, it was the first of their 4 games that year. Cole Fieldhouse. I was there that night. Gone in 54 seconds. Up 10 with 54 seconds to go. Jason Williams knocks down a 3. Shane Battier scores. Drew Nicholas misses a couple of front ends. Steve Blake had fouled out completely on a terrible call, which really hurt them down the stretch. Game goes to overtime. They lose 98-96. Now they got revenge on senior night at Cameron Indoor, but that is an all-time defeat snagged from the jaws of victory moment for me. No doubt. There's one from Maryland that ranks higher on my list, but that was crushing for sure.
Yeah, there's another one on my list, but I'll let somebody else come up with that.
Yeah. Maryland Maryland basketball fans have been put through it over a long lifetime of rooting for them. If you've been, in that 40 to 50 year range of being a Maryland basketball fan, there are many more crushing defeats than I think there have been exhilarating victories, although there have been a lot of those too. But yeah, gone in 54 seconds at home against Duke on a night when that building was absolutely insane. Terrence Morris had a dunk with about 8-9 minutes to go to put the Terps up double digits. And it was over. It was over. The building was insane. Kay was forced to call timeout, and it was rock and roll part 2, and the building was exploding, and it seemed like there was no chance. And that was a crushing defeat for sure. But they eventually met 3 more times in one of the great single season head-to-heads in college basketball history. 4 meetings between 2 teams in one season, and each game was special. Each game was special and memorable. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. 301-230-0980. Let's go to our guy Jerry in Gaithersburg. Jerry, go ahead.
Oh, it was, I think, the year 2024, the Redskins Cowboys. And I think it was touchdown pass to McLaurin, in almost the last seconds. But the next thing I know, I think the Cowboys ran back for a kickoff for a touchdown. Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
You remember the details? I don't remember the details, but
it was, first of all, what's interesting about that game is it was not one of Jaden's best games. For whatever reason, Dallas twice gave him some problems. The season finale was not whatever, but. Yeah, they had, Kavonte Turpin had that big kickoff return that gave Dallas, I think, a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. And then Washington, with 14 seconds left, 86-yard touchdown pass. Jaden to Terry McLaurin. And that gave them, a chance to tie. And Austin Seibert missed the extra point. And then Dallas returned the onside kick for a touchdown, and they had 2 kickoff returns in the fourth quarter. Yeah, look, that was not one of those games that you were up and it was over. That touchdown pass was only to tie the game had Seibert made the extra point. But, but it was certainly a shocking ending, but not exactly apples to apples to what happened last night. But appreciate the call. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Kevin Arlington. Kevin, go ahead. Yeah, I screwed that up. I don't know why it didn't come to me. A lot of Tampa, Washington playoff games over the years. Yes, but go ahead. Hello, Kevin in Arlington.
Can you hear me, buddy?
I got you now, Kev.
Yeah. The last footnote on that is that was the only playoff win under Gibbs 2.0, but it was amazing that anyone could win a playoff game with Dan in the ownership.
Right.
So
and having what was it, 120 yards of total offense and less than 50 passing or whatever it was.
Yeah. That was an interesting game. Kevin, I was going to say, there's so many Caps heartbreaks, and you asked for Caps, and Max had a really good one when we got the lock. I think that Easter Sunday, multiple overtime loss to the Islanders who tormented us is probably mine. But the one I want to mention, and it was the game that, interestingly enough, really made me a Maryland Terps fan, was the NC State game against David Thompson, Monaco, and Tom Burleson that, in those days, and you can say it and remember it better than I can, but it cost Maryland a chance to go to the postseason. And honestly, Kevin, I still think that was Maryland's best team. But what do you think or remember about that game other than Burleson had the game?
Well, the 1974 ACC tournament final in Greensboro between NC State and Maryland is a debatable greatest game ever played in college basketball until the Leitner shot against Kentucky. in 91 or in 92. Maryland NC State was always referenced as the greatest college basketball game of all time. Do you know in that game there wasn't one turnover in that basketball game? They lost 103 to 100 in overtime. It wasn't one of those games where Maryland had the game won. And, like I'll give you an example in 2010 where it felt like the game was won. But it was an unbelievable game. Burleson had 38. Thompson was uncheckable. Lucas, Howard, McMillan, Elmore, Owen Brown. They were arguably the two best teams in the country. NC State went on to win the title. They beat UCLA in the semifinals, and then they beat Marquette, Al McGuire's Marquette team in the final. But Maryland was they were ranked 4th when they played NC State. NC State was ranked 1st, but most people thought that Maryland was probably the second best team in the country. And so they couldn't go to the tournament. Back then, only the ACC tournament winner and only one team per conference could go. And Kevin, you know this, that was the game that expanded the NCAA tournament, and they called it the Maryland rule, where more than one team from each conference could go to the NCAA tournament because they left out one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country.
And Kev, just think about it. That really created or led the way to March Madness. And March Madness is one of the greatest things in American sports.
I mean, I think we would have eventually gotten there because of the money, Kevin. But
You're
yes,
right.
that was the early spark to expand the tournament. And I think it got expanded to 48 teams at that point or 52 teams at that point. I forget the exact number. Maryland actually, the following year, went to the Elite Eight because they were the first team from the ACC to be a non-ACC tournament winner to get an at-large bid. It happened the following year.
Oh, that's
so
right.
The game, and they went to the Elite Eight that year and lost to Louisville in the Elite Eight. But no, you're right. It was a monumental moment in the sport because the powers that be looked at it and said, how can the second or third best team in America not play in the NCAA tournament? We have to fix that.
Right.
And they did. Unfortunately,
Okay,
they didn't fix it the year before, so Maryland could have still gone to the tournament. But that was a devastating loss. It was not a game that they had won. I know they had a 10-point lead at one point, I think, in the second half, but that was just a brilliant basketball game by both teams.
Yeah, it
for
was.
sure.
It was.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Kev. I appreciate it. 301-230-0980. Let's do this for a little while longer. Off of the English losing a game that looked like it was going to be won, defeat snagged from the jaws of victory yesterday by the Argentinians over the English. Give us your worst, game is over and your team loses it like England did, where it was just so gut-wrenching and you'll never, ever forget it. I gave you mine. My number one was 79, Redskins Cowboys, Skins up 13 with just over 2 minutes to go. And they ended up going from literally in 2.5 minutes, the 1 seed and the favorite to go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, to being completely out of the playoffs. For those of you not old enough to remember that, or you weren't a Skins fan, that was truly devastating because it wasn't like, okay, it's a terrible loss, but let's go get him next week. It's over. It sent Riggo into hiatus. He was so devastated by that loss that he sat out the following year. He thought it was over for him, his chance to get to a Super Bowl. Thank God he came back, though, when Joe Gibbs became the head coach. Russell, Paulie, anybody else that wants to jump on? We've got an open line. Give me your worst personal defeat with one of your favorite teams where defeat was snagged from the jaws of victory like it was for the English last night. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
Smith back in. Play action. Oh, he's got it wide open. He's got Rocket Ismail. He's got it. He'll score, and the Cowboys will win. 76 yards ends the game in overtime. A record for Troy Aikman, 5 touchdowns in a single game. And the Dallas Cowboys have stunned the Redskins 41-35 in one for the ages between Dallas and Washington.
God, one of these days I'm just going to do an hour plus on all of the insane finishes in the history of Washington versus Dallas. That's certainly in a top 10 list for sure. Washington was up 35-14 in the fourth quarter, and Dallas scored 21 unanswered to force overtime, and then that 76-yard touchdown pass from Aikman to Rocket Ismail, Dick Stockton on the call. That was the opener of the 1999 season, and by the way, the very first game with Dan Snyder as the owner of the football team. That was game over, up 21 in the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't. I'm asking for examples like that to sort of make an analogy to what the English went through yesterday, thinking that they had the game won, only to see Argentina score twice in 7 minutes to beat England. My number one is still 79. Cowboys coming back from 13 down to beat the Skins 35-34 and end their season. There's a few other Dallas-Washington games that I haven't mentioned. And my number two I will get to here shortly. But let's go to Paulie. Paulie, what's up? Hail to the W.
Big guy, hail to the W, man. Hey, that was going to be my 1B.
Yeah.
That overtime, the Rockets, man. God.
Yeah, I don't know how they blew that game. I have no idea how they blew that game.
But it's nothing worse than losing to the Cowboys at home, man. I don't care what the record is, you know what I mean, what the situation is. It hurts losing to them at home. But listen, man, my 1A, bro, and because of recent events, it's not stinging me as bad as it usually. I don't like talking about it. I really don't. But 8 points in 9 seconds, Reggie Miller, bro.
Yeah, you're a Knicks guy. Just so everybody knows, Paulie's a Knicks fan. Yeah.
I hate Reggie Miller, bro. To this day, I will never, ever acknowledge Reggie Miller. 8 points in 9 seconds, man.
Crazy.
I mean, that's the type of losses where it don't even just affect you for that day, but like for the next 3 days. You know? And on top of that, I remember that day, I fell in the pool. You got all soaked and wet because I was so mad. I misstepped and fell in the pool.
I'll never forget watching that game. I remember exactly where I was. I had just gotten home from work, and I was sitting there, and I'm watching it, and I loved Reggie Miller. I actually was always a big Reggie Miller fan because I still think Reggie Miller, Paulie, is one of the best movers without the basketball in his hands of all time. Nobody worked harder offensively and set screens up without the ball better than Reggie Miller. And then he was deadly as a catch and shoot guy. And what he did in that environment in the Garden, that was all time. And of course, there were so many moments between the Pacers and the Knicks.
I said I don't acknowledge it, but man, clearly he was one of the greatest of all time. You know, he was Steph Curry before Steph Curry. You know what I mean? But that 8 points in 9 seconds, man, just thinking like, once again, it's going to be our year. And then he does that, and the whole choke sign. And, man, I hate Reggie Miller, man. I hate Charles Smith, too, against the Bulls.
Sure.
4 putback attempts. You know what I mean? Didn't get that. I mean, we supposed to win that game. Listen, man. That's why this championship was so sweet, man, because there's a lot of crushing defeats in Knicks history. But that Reggie Miller, man, 8 points in 9 seconds, man. I hate Reggie Miller.
All time.
I hate Spike Lee And I hate Spike Lee for the egg in the morning.
Yeah. Do you know,
You
I don't know if you're going to remember this or remember hearing about it, but 8 points in 9 seconds is the Knicks, Pacers history. 8 points in 17 seconds means something to the Duke North Carolina rivalry. In the 70s, with no three-point shot, Paulie, North Carolina in Carmichael, their home floor, against Duke in the regular season finale, they were down by 8 with 17 seconds left. No three-pointer. And they came back with a couple of steals, and Walter Davis, the great Walter Davis, who was a great NBA player with Phoenix, etc., he banked in a 40-footer at the buzzer to force overtime, and then Carolina won that game. But when you go to Duke, Carolina, fans, and you say, give me, the most memorable games, and they've got a long list of them, people of a certain age will say 8 points in 17 seconds. That's what it was with no three-pointer, which is almost impossible to pull off, and they did it. All right, if you're on hold, stay there. I see you guys sitting there, and I want to get more of these in. There's an open line if you want to weigh in. But off of England's blown lead late and loss in the World Cup semifinals, give me the game for you, which was the all-time for one of your teams where defeat was snagged from the jaws of victory. 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, and the team980.com. Can't hear it.
Morgan, right at Raymar Morgan. 6.6 left. Draymond Green finds Lucius for the win. He got it. Spartans move to the Sweet 16.
That's my number 2. Maryland losing at the buzzer in the 2010 NCAA tournament's second round in Spokane, Washington, to Michigan State on Corey Lucius and his buzzer-beating game winner to end the season for when Gravis Vasquez, Eric Hayes, Landon Milbourne, Sean Mosley, Jordan Williams, who was a freshman. Gravis had an absolute sensational second half in his final game as a college basketball player. He scored 12 of Maryland's final 14 points. They came from 16 down in the second half. They had the game seemingly won on Gravis's bank shot with 6.6 seconds left. And literally on the pass to Corey Lucius, the guy that ducked, it would have hit his head and the game's clock would have expired. It was Draymond Green. He ducked, ball went right to Lucius, and Lucius knocked down the 3. His only, Corey Lucius had more buckets than that, but his only season, because he was then found, I think, ineligible beginning in that next season, briefly, and then ultimately ended up finishing up his college career somewhere. I can't remember. Corey blanking Lucius. Devastating. The worst part about that for Maryland basketball was the bracket opened up. Northern Iowa upset the 1 seed Kansas. Maryland was the 4 seed. Michigan State was the 5, I think, in that game. And Maryland was, in position to make a Final Four run. They were the ACC regular season champs with Duke. And they were playing their best basketball of the year heading into that tournament. And if they had gone on to win, they would have played Northern Iowa in the Sweet 16 and then Tennessee, I think it was, in the Elite 8. They would have been favored more likely than not in both of those games to take Gary back to the Final Four. Devastating. That's my number 2 in terms of victory right there. And then all of a sudden it's over, similar to what the English went through yesterday against Argentina. I've got another 6 games down here that haven't been mentioned. 301, including a Nats game that is all-time. 301-230-0980. Give me the worst loss where the game was won for any team that you rooted for. We'll go to PJ in Chevy Chase. PJ, go ahead.
Hello, Kevin. Good morning.
PJ, what's up?
Thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
Just before I tell you mine, just in case there's no DeMatha guys on hold today, I think it's important just to reflect on the Caleb Williams Hail Mary pass when he was a quarterback in high school.
Who did he play for, PJ?
He played for Gonzaga downtown.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he, yeah. And then DeMatha returned a kick with about 15 seconds left to go up by 5 points.
Huh.
And the game was over. Gonzaga got the ball back. They squib kicked it, and then Gonzaga threw a Hail Mary from the 40-yard line, and they caught it, and they won the game. So that was a doozer. But
you didn't go to Gonzaga,
really,
did you?
For me,
you were a public school kid, right?
I know that.
No, he was not.
Yes, I'm familiar.
All right. So give me your game. By the way, have I mentioned a game that wasn't gut-wrenching for you too? Well, forget the Maryland side, the Skins losses.
Those were all very, very difficult. Mine is actually a series. It was the 2017 Nats. We the Cubs, and it was only a 5-game series. And we won game 4, 5-0 in Wrigley.
Strasburg.
And then we came back to Nats. Yep. And then we came back to Nats Park. Gio got us the lead. We put Scherzer in relief. He kind of got knocked up a little bit, and we ended up losing the game. I think it was like 10-9 or something like that. But
9-8.
That was, for me, it was just so difficult because it was kind of like, what are we doing here? We'd been in such a drought. It was the year before, the Caps won and then the Nats won. And it was just year after year after year after year of just losing. And I just remember, the only time I've ever, I'm a diehard, long-time listener to the show, diehard sports fan. It was the first time I'd ever really, really been depressed after a game. The next morning, I was questioning my fandom of DC teams, and then of course we caught lightning in a bottle the next 24 months. The Caps and Nats ended up winning, and that was a good reprieve. But those were dark times for DC back in those days.
Well, that was their third Game 5 loss at home. 2012 is the game that I have written down when they literally had the game won with 2 outs, Drew Storen on the bump and a big lead, and they blew it to the Cardinals in the 9th and lost 9-7 in their first playoff year in 2012. I think that's the all-time Nats loss in terms of, making it analogous to what happened in the soccer game yesterday. Then they lost to the Dodgers in Game 5 at home in 2016, and then they lost to the Cubs after Strasburg. You can correct me if I'm wrong on the details, because PJ from Chevy Chase has sort of that memory as well on all of the details from these games. But that was the game in which Strasburg was going to bow out because he had flu symptoms or had the sniffles. And they basically, if I recall, Dusty essentially said, yeah, we may have to make a change, kind of, shaming Strasburg into taking the bump, which he did. And he was brilliant. And that was the first, of what would become several clutch pitching performances by Strasburg, who was unbelievable that day. Struck out, 13 or 14 at Wrigley, and won that game to keep the Nats alive. Do I have that right? Details?
He hung up.
PJ must have been busy. He works for a living. That was Strasburg's performance in Game 6 of the World Series in 2019, I think, is one of the greatest clutch performances in DC sports history. I think Strasburg is going to go down as one of the great clutch performers. But remember, before that Game 4 in 2017, there were questions about whether or not, allergy symptoms or a cold was going to keep him from taking the bump. And the descriptions by Tony all those years of calling him the Orchid would have been completely appropriate. But he ended up going out there, and here it is, 7 innings complete, 3 hits, no runs, no earned runs, 2 walks, 12 strikeouts in a brilliant performance in which the Nats won 5-0 before coming back home in Game 7 and Game 5. That was actually a 7-game series. No, that was a 5-game series, and lost in Game 5, 9-8, which was their third Game 5 loss at home during those years. To me, the all-time, defeat snagged from the jaws of victory loss for the Nats was their first playoff series against St. Louis. They've got a big lead. They're up in the 9th inning, 2 outs, Drew Storen on the hill, and they give up, singles, Discalco, Cosma, and all of a sudden they're down 9-7, and the crowd is absolutely stunned. Took a 7-5 lead into the 9th inning, and Storen gave it up. That is the one that's, I think, most analogous to yesterday. Let's go to Robert in Annapolis. Robert, go ahead.
All right, good morning. I'm going to go way back. I'm sure you remember this. I think you've even mentioned it a time or two. That I'll say the 1972 Olympics.
Yeah, of course, the basketball game, Russia. Yeah.
The U.S., and really they didn't blow the game. I always thought that game was taken away.
They had it stolen from them completely. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an international game that would draw a comparison. Would the Clint Longley Thanksgiving, what was that, 1974?
Of course. It's on my list. I can't believe no one's called in with that. Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Washington had a 13-point lead in that game. They were up 23-10.
We've all had these games, Kev. We've all had these games. We've all
What's
had
yours?
The losing side.
What's yours for Baltimore team?
I probably more so the Orioles and the Ravens. The Orioles had some really powerful teams against Pittsburgh. Okay, I'll go with the '79 World Series. They were up
3-1,
3-1, coming home for 2 games, and they lost the next 3. So that wasn't a one-game thing, but it was still the same feeling.
Parker, Stargell, and the We Are Family team, and I think that was the Game 7 where snow was falling during the game, right?
Game 1. Game 1 was in
What was that,
Baltimore,
Game 1?
and they did have some. Yeah, it was the first game. Hey, I lost my connection with you yesterday, and I don't know if you want to do it now, but I did have a comment on you. You were talking about these lists. We were talking about these lists of top players, and I guess my question is this, and you can deal with it another time if you so wish. After 3 years of roster building by Adam Peters, are you disappointed, or whatever word you want to use, in the lack of players on these lists?
No. They went 12-5, and we're 60 minutes away from the Super Bowl in year 1 with a lot of new players on that team.
Yeah, I'm not talking about just success of a particular season, so to speak.
Well, I'm just saying that I think our fans overlook the fact that a lot of the key contributors after Jaden, obviously, which, by the way, was his first big decision, and I think he got that one right. But there were a lot of players that contributed to that team that year that weren't on that roster before the season began, and the cupboard was bare. And by the way, we've got 3 off seasons, yes, but only 2 seasons to judge them on because they haven't played the third season yet. And the second season was injury marred. So I'm an Adam Peters fan so far. I'm not, pessimistic at all. Check back in with me, a year from now. But I feel good about what they're doing. And I think that, we'll see what happens with offensively, whether they have enough playmakers. But it wasn't like they didn't try to add some playmakers.
There are grumblings. There are grumblings in the fan base.
Well, yeah. Our fan base, our fan base is a lot different than it was 25 years ago. I'll just leave it at that. A lot different. And social media hasn't helped the perception of our fan base, for sure. By the way, what you started this conversation with, for those that don't know, the 72 Olympic basketball final in Munich, the Munich Games, obviously, marred by the takeover of the Israeli Olympic team and the tragedy that ensued. But that Olympic final was between the U.S. And the USSR, and the U.S. Had a 1-point lead when Doug Collins made a couple of free throws, and then the Soviets inbounded, the clock ran out, the buzzer sounded, the U.S. celebrated. And then for some reason, they went back to the scorer's table and they added 3 seconds back and gave the Soviets another chance. And then they didn't score. And then they went back and said that the inbounds pass, I think, had come before they put the ball in play, and they gave them another chance. And on that chance, I forget the dude's name for Russia, famous player, caught it and scored at the buzzer, and the U.S. lost the gold medal game by 1. It was absolutely stolen from them. Terrible moment in Olympic history. Of course, nothing compared to what happened to the Israeli team, clearly. Thank you, Robert, in Annapolis. Let's go to John in Jacksonville. John, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. It's been a while, but he just took mine. So, yes, November 1974, the Thanksgiving game. I'm 13 years old. Haven't been just in the D.C. area for a little while. My dad was transferred to the Marine Corps. So most of my friends are Cowboys fans. So, of course, when Roger gets knocked out, I'm talking trash big time, especially when Clint Longley comes in. Who is this guy? Throws a couple touchdown passes. In fact, I think Billy Kilmer, I don't think he even threw for 120 yards in that whole game. And I think, if memory serves, I think Jerry Smith and Charlie Taylor maybe only had 1 catch each. I mean, statistically,
I'll pull up the box score. The Skins dominated the Cowboys throughout. And to your point, Staubach gets knocked out by Dyron Talbert, which he predicted before the game. And Clint Longley comes in, and it's Thanksgiving Day, and the game's over. They're up 23 to 16 to 3, or they're up 2 scores going into the fourth quarter. And Longley throws the bomb to Drew Pearson over Ken Stone, the safety, with like 50 seconds left, I think, and Washington lost 24-23. One of the all-time
totally
great and memorable Thanksgiving Day games. Sure.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of Clint Longley, didn't Roger Staubach punch him out in the?
He punched him out, knocked him out in the locker room. Apparently, Longley was not a favorite in that locker room. He let that Thanksgiving Day game go to his head, and he mouthed off a little bit to Roger. I think the following year in training camp, it may have been, or maybe it was, I forget exactly when it was. And Roger Staubach, clean-cut Roger Staubach, the naval midshipman, knocked him out in the locker room.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's an all-time devastating loss, and that is the perfect example of certainly defeat snagged from the jaws of victory, because we felt like it was over, and it was a devastating day because it was Thanksgiving Day. It ruined everybody's meal. My very good friend Scott Van Pelt has told this story probably 30 times over the years about how it almost killed his grandfather, Lorenzo. Lorenzo was popping, nitroglycerides. He had an heart issue. And when Longley completed that pass to Drew Pearson, his grandfather keeled over. And as an 8-year-old, Scott remembers being traumatized by the ambulance coming and taking his grandfather to the hospital. He survived, but Clint Longley almost killed Scott Van Pelt's grandfather on Thanksgiving Day, 1974. Good one, John. Yeah, that was on my list for sure. Let's go to Bobby in North Carolina. Bobby, go ahead.
Hey, Kev. I got a couple that score ring a bell with you. 79 was definitely a tremendous gut punch. You guys just mentioned the Thanksgiving game. Kevin, I remember that game vividly. We had sat down for some reason. I was up in D.C. with my grandma. We were having our Thanksgiving supper. We ate late because the game was on late. And I remember almost getting sick to my stomach, throwing up literally after, Longley did what he did there. And then I got another one, too. I'll never forget. Duke and Maryland in basketball that Saturday night in Cole, where we were up by double digits.
Gone in 54. Yep.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable, that game. And I still, I just still can't believe we blew that game that night. But anyway, those are some good ones where had an immediate impact on my life, and I'm sure yours did too. Good to talk to you.
There's another, so now we've taken calls here long enough where most of you have covered a lot of the games that, for me, look, Maryland had a 22-point lead against Duke in the Final Four later that year. That was a devastating loss because it was like, okay, we're better than them. We're going to the NCAA tournament final. And Duke came back. And, of course, you and I both know the details of Lonnie Baxter fouling out and Carlos Boozer not fouling out, which was absurd. Exactly. And Duke won that game. Duke ended up winning 3 of the 4 that year, but the 3 they won, down by 10 with 54 seconds to go, a tip in by Nate James with 3 seconds to go in the ACC tournament semifinal, and then coming back from 22 down in the first half to win the Final Four game. But I'm looking at my list. There is one Redskins game. There are a couple of others, but because you're old enough to remember this, and we were both kids, but the Mel Gray catch was devastating in 75. Maryland, the Skins had a 17-10 lead. 4th and 10, Jim Hart throws a pass. If you ever want to see why you need replay in the NFL, he doesn't even come close to catching the football and having possession. It hits his chest. It's knocked out, I think, by Pat Fisher. It's incomplete. The Redskins are celebrating, and the referees huddle up and say it was a catch. Game goes to overtime. They lose, and that was the difference in 75 between no playoffs and playoffs. That basically cost them a playoff bid.
I got one more real quick. I remember the Super Bowl with the Raiders. I remember going up to D.C. I was in Georgetown in a bar. Me and a high school friend of mine, we drove up. And, we were good that year. That was one of the best teams we've ever had. Yeah, and I just remember losing a pile of money back in the day on that game. I mean, I had a lot of money invested and we lost. And I just remember that miserable drive back to North Carolina that Monday morning coming back out.
But you know what's interesting about that, Bobby? What's interesting about that is that, like, that doesn't fit the description, as you know, of this segment. But for me, that's never been a loss that I have stewed over. We were dominated. Dominated, start to finish.
I was just thinking the money at the time that I lost and pissed away because
I know.
I had a nickel on the game, which was a lot of money back then in my world, you know. But,
no, you're right. You're right. By the way, I was betting nickels on games too back then, which, by the way, I didn't have it to bet, as all of us, you know, that those years. As bettors, you know, you always, you know, we got to bet on credit, as you know, Bobby. That made a big difference.
That's right.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, buddy. Have a good day. Later.
Yeah, those, like the Super Bowl 18 loss, I know for a lot of longtime Redskins fans is near the top of the list. It's not for me because that was, bottom line is, we got dominated. We got dominated by a great football team. And a football team that had played Washington in the regular season at RFK without Michael Haynes and without, I think, wait a minute. Michael Haynes had not been traded for yet, I think, on that Raiders team in 83. The Skins were dominant in 83. They were such a great team in 83. Marcus Allen was on the team, but didn't play in the first game, I think. So I'm going back to look just to make sure. I think Marcus Allen didn't play in the regular season game, which meant essentially their two best players in the Super Bowl didn't play. Yeah, Marcus Allen did not play in that game in October. Washington won one of the best regular season games of that season or any season. They came back from 15 down in the fourth quarter and won 37-35. But they got dominated in the Super Bowl. I mean, Haynes and Hayes completely shut down Monk and Charlie Brown. Defensively, they got run over by Marcus Allen, who clipped Riggins' record from the year before for rushing yards. He went for 181 in that Super Bowl, including the backbreaker in the fourth quarter or third quarter, whenever it was. And their defense was dominant against the best offensive team in football that year. So I think some of the gut-wrenching, losses that we're talking about are more memorably hurtful for me than that Super Bowl loss. Or even the giant NFC Championship loss, because Skins were dominated in that game too. All right, there's still some callers on hold, so we'll do a few more of these. Ross, Bob, anybody else on hold, stay there. Off the English loss to the Argentinians in the World Cup semifinal, giving up 2 goals in 7 minutes at the end of the game, give me the game and the team that you rooted for that will never, ever go away in your memory as just an all-time painful defeat where you thought victory was assured. 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
wire in this game. And there's a ball hit off the glove of Desmond. 2 runs are going to score. The Cardinals are tying up. Descalso with a sharp ground ball off the glove of Ian Desmond, and we have a new ball game. And the Cardinals.
Yeah. That was the game for the Nationals that meets the criteria of what we're talking about. A 7-5 lead with 2 outs, 1 out away from the NLCS. And here come the Cardinals roaring back. Drew Storen giving up 4 earned runs with just 1 out to go. And the Nats lost that game 9-7. By the way, that was, that first playoff series for the Nats in 2012. And in that 5th and deciding game, Harper was unreal. So was Ryan Zimmerman. But Harper was a big part of building that lead. He had a homer. He had 2 hits, 2 RBIs, walked, I think, once. And he was 19 years old, or had he turned 20 at that point? Maybe he was 20 at that point. All right. Let's get a few more in here. Ross in Tampa. Ross, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Kevin, what's good, man? How are you doing this morning?
What's up? How are you, Ross?
Hey, so part I won't take up too much time. So the first one, gut wrench, and it was the 2005 divisional weekend. You see, back then I'm in middle school, and I was doing the whole Steve Zabin thing where I did the dual citizenship with teams I rooted for, and all I wanted was a Washington-Indianapolis Super Bowl. And I got 2 cornerbacks to blame that I didn't get it. Obviously you mentioned it many times over the years about Carlos Rogers not snagging that pick 6.
Yeah.
And then, I'm devastated about that because that game was on a Saturday. And, my best friend at the time, he had, oh, man, hey, listen, bro, don't worry about it. We're going to go to the Colts game tomorrow. They're going to handle business against Pittsburgh because we beat them earlier that year in Monday Night Football. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, sure. And then obviously you all saw how that game happened. Nick Harper scooped and he could have scored and all that.
Yeah, right.
That was a gut punch for sure. And then the second one, from one former college gambler to another, it was the week, and I told Max about this one. This was the week where Odell Beckham and Josh Norman were just going at it the whole game. I remember it vividly. It was a 12-leg parlay. It was like maybe 7 college games, and then the rest of them were
This isn't a bad beat
NFL
segment.
games.
I mean, I want to hear it. I want to hear you tell me about this 12-team parlay that came down to 1 game. But we're not doing bad beats here in terms of gambling. But go ahead. You would hit the first 11 on a 12-team parlay?
The first 11. And then it's just the money.
Tell me what it was going to pay. Tell me what the wager was and what it was going to pay.
Oh, man, all these years ago. I know it was $850. It was an $850 wager. I don't remember what the winnings were. And
wait, it was an $850 wager on a 12-team parlay?
Yeah, my mom still cusses me out about that to this very day.
So it was going to pay tens of thousands, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All the college games came home.
More than that. It was going to pay hundreds of thousands.
Oh, no, 12-team. Kevin, I'm still throwing. I'm about to throw up right now, bringing it up. It was the week where the Ravens had those ugly goals.
As degenerate as I was, and I was degenerate, I would have. One thing I learned very quickly is parlays and teasers are profit margin for the house. But at $850 12-team parlay, you were sick. You had a problem.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't sober when I made that choice. I'll admit it right now.
It was beyond alcohol infused. You had yourself a legitimate gambling problem. But go ahead.
I drive cross country though, Kevin, so I wasn't that bad.
Okay. $850 12-team parlay. How old were you? You were in college?
I was 23.
Okay. That's
and
insane.
Me and my dad had just started gambling together. I would always do it, and I did it on my own, and they weren't happy with me. But no, you remember the game? The Giants and the Panthers were undefeated at the time. They were 7-point favorites, and they were blowing the doors off of New York. They were up like 35-7. So I'm like, okay, that game's wrapped up. Now we're about to cash out. And then obviously they came back 35-35, and then all the Carolina Panthers needed to do was just kick a game-winning field goal. They won the game, but I lost the leg, and every other game came home. That's the only one I remember. Washington ended up beating Buffalo that week. I remember putting them on there. Oh, it was the worst. I was sick to my stomach. I'm still sick now. But yeah, it was $850 wager.
I just want to be clear on something. You had a 12-team parlay in which the wager was $850. The payoff wasn't going to be $850. The actual money lost put down was $850.
Yes, and yeah, it would have got me somewhere north. Oh my gosh, I think it was north of 15K.
Oh, no, it would have been much more than that. On a 12-team parlay, it would have been a lot more than that. Were these so these were all point spreads. They weren't money line bets, right?
No money line bets. I think the only money line bet I did was when Baltimore and Kansas City played that week, and then Buffalo and Washington. Everything else is point spread.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it wouldn't have paid a lot more than that. But yeah, anyway, thanks. You had a major problem for sure. And trust me, I'm able to identify problem gamblers. Bob, Outer Banks, finish it up for us. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. As a Virginia Tech fan, I think it was 2005 on a Thursday night, Virginia Tech's hosting Boston College. I stood in the rain for 58 minutes and watched Tech win 10-0. And then stupid Matty Ice threw 2 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes of the game. We lost 14-10. It's even worse when it's in person and you see it live.
Sure.
And to be standing in pouring rain the entire game made it doubly bad. But I think you would also, I don't know, Maryland didn't dominate, but what was the 78 ACC championship when Buck Williams got undercut?
Yeah, 70. Yeah, the 1980 ACC tournament final, and Kenny Denard undercut Buck on Albert King's shot, and Duke stole the ACC final. I mean, Maryland was really good. They were the regular season ACC champs that year with Buck, Albert, Ernie Graham, Greg Manning, etc. Yeah, that was painful, but that was a back and forth game. It wasn't, Maryland was down on that final shot. Yeah. By the way, there's no way Ross's $850 12-team parlay, would have paid off. I mean, I just did the math on this. If it were just straight, point spreads, it would have paid basically $500,000 to as much as, depending on the actual odds, and it could have paid up to $1.5 million. It wasn't going to be tens of thousands. I kind of need
a bookie shelling that out, Kev?
I'm sorry?
You think a bookie is shelling that out in 2015?
Well, a 12-team parlay, I think bookies will take any size wager because you're not going to win 12-team parlays. But I'm questioning whether or not our guy Ross in Tampa actually made. I had an outsized problem with my friend group in college and beyond into our 20s before we got married and started having kids and got a little bit responsible. And the amounts wagered on sports betting were obscene for our means at the time. There's no way in hell on a 3-team parlay, that pays 6-1. A 2-team parlay pays roughly 5-2. A 3-teamer pays 6-1. 4-teamer 10-1. 5-teamer 20-1. Depending on actual prices on games, but that's essentially what it is. There's no way I would have ever put an $850 wager on a multi-team parlay. Maybe a 2-team parlay, in fact, definitely probably a dime at some point on a 2 or a 3-team parlay, but a 12-team parlay, that's such a sucker bet. You might as well just say, hey, here's $850. Take it. All right, Bob, thanks for that call. Yeah, Matt Ryan was a phenomenal quarterback at Boston College. Had some big-time games, clutch games. He's going to be one of those interesting cases for the Hall of Fame, right? When is he eligible for the Hall of Fame? When is Matt Ryan eligible for the Hall of Fame?
Well, what year did he retire and then add 5 years? 22?
Has he been retired for 5 years?
No, he has not been retired for. It's been like maybe 3 or 4.
He was a league MVP, right? With Kyle as his offensive coordinator in 2016 when they went to the Super Bowl and blew the big lead against New England. He is. Let me just see his Hall of Fame monitor.
Yeah, I'm actually curious myself. What year did he retire? He retired in 22.
22. So it's next year.
Yeah.
27. He'll be eligible. I don't know. Part of me I always like doing it where without looking at the numbers, I say, based on my memory of this player, was he a Hall of Famer? I don't view Matt Ryan as a Hall of Famer. And I'm looking at the numbers, and they are really, really insane numbers. I mean, in terms of passing yardage, he's 9th on the list all-time passing yardage. He's behind Phillip Rivers, who I think is an absolute Hall of Famer. I mean, if you gave me the choice of Phillip Rivers or Matt Ryan, knowing what we know now, I would take Phillip Rivers.
I've got the Hall of Fame monitor numbers.
Where is it?
So the average Hall of Fame QB scores a 110. Matt Ryan has a 106.05.
So it's really close.
He's with Patrick Mahomes and Matt Stafford. And Ben Roethlisberger is right below him, as is Phil
that
Rivers.
Hall of Fame monitor is discounted if you're telling me that Matt Stafford and Patrick Mahomes are below at this point Hall of Fame.
They're just above Matt Ryan, but just below the average Hall of Fame quarterback score of 110. So Stafford's at 108.11 and Patrick Mahomes is 106.65. But that's as their careers stand right now.
I'm trying to think of is Vinny Testaverde in the Hall of Fame? He's not, right? I don't think he is.
He is not.
He's not in the Hall of Fame. To me, Matt Ryan is Vinny Testaverde. Vinny Testaverde did not win an MVP, though. I'm pretty sure he did not win an MVP. Where is Vinny Testaverde on the list of passing yards?
He's way down there. Oh, well, not.
He is? Okay.
Passing yards.
He's 18. Oh, you're right. He's 18th. Matt Ryan's 9th.
Yeah.
Then there's probably a better comp. Maybe Carson Palmer's the comp for Matt Ryan.
That feels disrespectful to Matt Ryan.
It does?
A little bit.
Matt Ryan's a 4-time Pro Bowler, a 1-time All-Pro, obviously the year he was the MVP. That MVP is going to certainly help him a lot. But when I think about Matt Ryan, I think about guys like Carson Palmer and Vinny Testaverde. I don't think about Phillip Rivers. I know I'm a big Phillip Rivers fan, but Phillip Rivers, guys like Rivers and Roethlisberger, like his contemporaries, much more Hall of Fame worthy in my mind than Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's got 4 Pro Bowls, okay? And Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer's got 3. Carson Palmer's on the 17th all-time passing yards. Matt Ryan's 9th, man. Carson Palmer had a lot of injury seasons, though. I'm right about that. And I think Vinny did, too. Vinny had a lot of injury seasons. I think Eli's more deserving because of the postseason success. I mean, if they hold on to that lead and he's got a Super Bowl, do I think differently about Matt Ryan? Maybe. I think Matt Ryan was a really good NFL quarterback, but I don't know. He's right on the border for Hall of Fame, right?
Got a first-team All-Pro? Yeah, he is. He's right there, right?
Just one first-team All-Pro was the year, obviously, he was the MVP.
Yeah. Big Ben has 0. But Big Ben also has
Ben has 0 MVPs.
0 first-team All-Pros, but 2 Super Bowls.
And obviously, Eli's postseason success is the thing that's going to be his calling card into the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I think the one thing about Eli, and I've always said this, that Eli, to just say that Eli was fabulous in the playoffs, which he was, and was critical to their 2 Super Bowl runs. And yeah, I know the defenses played major roles in the Giants' 2 Super Bowl runs and their 2 Super Bowl victories against New England. But he was awesome in many of those playoff games against the Packers in the NFC title game, 49ers. But he had some unbelievable regular seasons. He threw for 4,000 plus yards 7 times in his career and nearly threw for 5,000 yards in 2011. Eli was a 4-time Pro Bowler himself. I think Eli gets undersold on how good of a regular season quarterback he was. His regular season would not put him in the Hall of Fame. I'm not suggesting that without the postseason. But Eli threw for 57,000 yards, and he is 11th on that all-time yardage list. What about touchdowns? I mean, I sometimes hesitate doing the touchdown list, but where is Eli and Matt Ryan on the touchdown list? Matt Ryan's 10th, Eli is 11th. And then Carson Palmer 16th and Vinny Testaverde 19th. I don't know. Maybe those are bad comps. I always love doing that as football fans without looking at the numbers. Hall of Famer, yes or no, first blush. With Matt Ryan, I know it's close, but I'd lean no. All right. We've got some more sound from Jeremy Fowler, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, on Jaden Daniels this time. You'll hear it next. All of our NFL coverage on the Team 980 is presented by Xfinity. Score the most reliable Wi-Fi. One price, 5 years, guaranteed. Xfinity, Imagine that. We've played a lot of Jeremy Fowler sound from the last couple of days. A lot of it was on Stephon Diggs and Brandon Ayuk as it related to Washington. Keim had him on, a fellow ESPNer, I guess, yesterday. And Keim asked him about kind of teams around the league and what they're expecting Jaden Daniels to do. Here's what Jeremy Fowler said.
I'm with you. Like what I've heard from people around the league is more exactly what you've heard, that they are not concerned about his play. It's just more, hey, when he's healthy, he can do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I mean, the 2024 is not a fluke. Like the guy can really play the position, you know? And so even though Caleb Williams was 10th and ahead of Jaden Daniels, most people I talk to say that Jaden Daniels is a better quarterback. Now, Caleb Williams is sort of a force of nature, right? Like he's great in the fourth quarter, closes games. He makes plays only a few people in the world can make, you know? So if you like upside and traits and all those things, you're going to go with Caleb. But Jaden, from a progression, decision-making standpoint, is a better quarterback, I would say. So, and probably further along as far as, you know, advancement. So I think for that reason, you know, he's going to be right there. I mean, I talked to several teams that were like, I think he's going to kind of get back to, you know, stamping his name on the NFL books this year and being a major factor.
I mean, I think most of us agree with that. I have not watched much of the Quarterbacks Netflix series yet. I really want to watch it. I've heard it's pretty good with Flacco in particular, and a lot of people kind of like Cam Ward as well in this show. I know that there's some really good stuff. Several of you have pointed out that there's some really good stuff from Jaden about the Chicago Monday night game. And then, of course, the Seattle game, which he should have never been in the game at the end. If he was going to be in the game, it should have been to hand the ball off. I mean, running an RPO on a condensed field in that spot was really, really unfortunate and not, in my opinion, very bright by the team. That knocked him out, obviously, with the dislocated elbow. But I've heard that so far it's good. Bill Barnwell wrote a story today on ESPN.com assessing trade value for key players on every NFL team and what key players, if they were up for trade, would bring back. It's always a tough conversation because sometimes it's a matter about, you know, it's a matter of supply demand. It's a matter of, you know, how much demand there really is. And prices are different. They end up, I've said this for many, many years. I think a hard conversation, and the one we get wrong as much as any other, and we get a lot wrong, is trying to assess trade value before a trade's actually made. For Washington, there's just one player that would bring back multiple first-round picks, and that's Jaden Daniels. He would bring back, according to Bill Barnwell, 3 first-round picks and more. And he writes, it wasn't a banner year for Daniels, who dealt with multiple injuries amid a frustrating 2025 season. Optimists who saw an unflappable playmaker at LSU witnessed Daniels immediately revitalized a moribund franchise in 2024. But teams that were worried about Daniels' slight frame entering the draft were given further fuel for their fears last season. So he thinks if Washington ever traded Jaden Daniels, which they wouldn't, that it would be 3 first-round picks and more. But the reason it wouldn't even be more than that is, you know, there is a feeling of got to see a couple of years like 2024 of him playing in every football game. So, yeah. If you've got HVAC needs, I'm telling you, Foley Mechanical is who you should reach out to. Any sort of air conditioning, any sort of internal HVAC need, please give Foley Mechanical a shot. We had issues about 8 months ago, reached out to Foley Mechanical, actually reached out to Dan Foley himself, and he came out with his team, and he got it done for us. What an impressive company. This is one of those companies where they do everything, and Dan controls the quality. There's no private equity firm behind him. He's not a franchisee. He controls all of the quality, from the equipment to the people he hires. And his team that dealt with our issue, professional, skilled, and really Super smart, as Coach Joe would say. Foley Mechanical is full service, heating and air conditioning, hot water, and boilers, and they're the go-to for older homes with radiator heat, a real specialty. They work across D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, the DMV, and they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your system needs help or you just want it done right, call Foley Mechanical and tell Dan that I sent you. You can also find out all you need to know at FoleyMechanical.com. We're going to shift the conversation to the Nationals, who lost 3 painful games last weekend to the Yankees and went into the All-Star break at 48-49. They'll come out of that All-Star break tomorrow night against the Oakland A's. The A's. Dave Jagler, part of the radio team, will join us next.
The 2-2. Swing, it's golfed in the air, straightaway center and deep. Grisham going back to the warning track near the wall. It's over his head. Over the wall, it's gone. It's a home run. A pinch hit, game-tying home run for Curtis Mead.
The smooth voice and call of when Dave Jagler, along with Charlie Slows, part of a longtime Nats radio booth. Dave is joining us right now. Let me just mention real quickly, if you're in the market for windows, Window Nation is the call you should make. And really, that's all I'm asking you to do is just allow them to come out and give you a free in-home estimate. It takes an hour or less. You'll actually find out which windows in your home need to be replaced. And if you decide to move forward with Window Nation, how about 50% off all window styles right now, half price on everything, with no money down, no payments, and no interest for 2 years. You won't pay anything until the year 2028. Window Nation has over 45,000 five-star reviews on social media, and Forbes magazine rated them number 1 in America among all window installation companies. Window Nation's windows were featured recently on HGTV's Designing Spaces. I promise you, if you pick Window Nation, they're the real deal. It'll work out. It all starts with a free, no-risk in-home estimate. Call them at 866-90-NATION or head to windownation.com. So before, Dave, we get to the season that we've seen so far, I'm going to ask you something that we did with callers off of the heels. Have you been following the World Cup at all? Have you been watching it?
Here and there. I mean, obviously, a lot of the games happen when I'm working, but I kind of know. I know what's going on. So
okay. So yesterday, the English lost a game in which essentially defeat was snagged from the jaws of victory. So for an hour plus, we took calls. It's All-Star week, by the way. That's the slowest week on the sports calendar. So we took calls for over an hour. The most gut-wrenching loss for you and your team, when victory seemed assured and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And there are several Nats games to pick from, but I'm wondering if something immediately pops to your mind.
Well, if you were talking this season, we have about 12 of them. But
yes, true.
For all time, right away my mind went to Game 5, 2012, the first ever appearance in the postseason. They had a 6-0 lead, and Gio Gonzalez on the mound in the 4th inning, and they had a 7-5 lead, 1 strike away from a win with Drew Storen on the mound. So that one immediately jumps to mind because that was the first time that they had been there. And all 4 division series losses were crushing, but I think that one was the most because they were, again, 1 strike away from advancing, which we've seen the Nationals be 1 strike away from winning 3 times this year, and they've not won the game. Those were all against the Phillies over 2 different series. So that one, to me, jumps out right away.
100% for me, too. And remember, the night before was Jason Worth's game-winning home run that forced that 5th and deciding game. I remember talking for a week after that game on radio. And as a born and raised Washingtonian and not having baseball for 33 years, it was one of those hurts, Dave, that I think sports fans have to suffer through before they can really appreciate when you actually get it done, which this team did in 2019. And this team had 3 Game 5 losses at home. That was the first one. The Dodgers came in here in 16 and won Game 5. And then the Cubs, obviously, after Strasburg's Game 4 gem at Wrigley, came in here and won Game 5. I think it was a nice sort of building of thick skin before you could really appreciate what happened in 2019.
No, we had plenty of scar tissue built up. There's no question. And we can't slight 2014, that team that stormed the regular season, won on the last day of the regular season with a Jordan Zimmerman no-hitter, and just kind of came out a little bit flat and lost a series to the wild card Giants that they probably never should have lost. And even though that one was only in 4 games, that one stung too, because of all the teams that didn't win, I think that might have been the best team that didn't win. 4 were knocked off in the division series.
I'll tell you what, in terms of attending a sporting event live, that Game 2, the 18-inning game, where the temperature, I think, went from 70 to like 40 during the course of that game. Do you remember how windy and cold it got by the end of that night? That was a devastating loss, and it was like 2 home games to open up that series. They just couldn't hit in that series, right? Other than Harper, if I remember correctly.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Harper hit a bunch of homers, and the wind. You said the wind changed. It dropped, precipitously, like 20-something degrees, and the wind knocked down a ball that Anthony Rendon hit that would have been a home run earlier in the game in like the 14th or 15th inning. So it just felt like that game was never going to end, and it felt like 2 losses in one, even though it only counted as one. But once that happened, you kind of had a feeling it was not going to be their series.
Yeah, I mean, in their first 2 seasons as a playoff team as the Washington Nationals, there were memorable games. Game 4 and 5 against St. Louis, and obviously Game 2 against San Francisco in 2014. All right, so let's get to this team. They will open up the first of their, final 65 games. Tomorrow night you'll be there when they face the A's. So if they had just a normal bullpen, where do you think they'd be right now in the standings?
I think they'd be in wild card position. I don't know that they'd be in first place in front of the Braves, but they'd be in wild card position. We can run through the laundry list of games that haven't gone their way, that had late leads, but when you have the number 1 offense in baseball with just an average pitching staff, look where they would be. Unfortunately, that's not been the case, but I give this team credit and kind of look at it as a glass half full, that after all these tough losses, the offense keeps coming back the next day and scoring more runs. So they're probably in a better position than what we thought they would be going into the season. But considering how it's played out, you're almost a little disappointed they are where they are, because it could.
Oops, did we lose Dave? I think we just lost him briefly. Try to get him back.
My house. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. I got you now. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you kind of cut off when you said, look, 48 and 49, we'd probably all take it back in, late March, but here they are, and it could have been a lot better.
Yeah. And those are the games, the 3 games against the Phillies where they were 1 strike away, 9-1 against the Giants, 6-1 with the Dodgers leading late early in the season. There's a bunch of them. But honestly, they didn't. The bullpen wasn't an area that was addressed in the offseason. In fact, they traded away their top 2 relievers over the course of last season: Kyle Finnegan during last season and Jose Ferrer in the offseason. So obviously, this team has achieved more sooner than we thought. So if you're an optimist, glass half full, you feel good about the first half in that respect. We're watching one of the best single season offensive performances in Nationals history with what James Wood is doing, and an all-star first half from Abrams, and Foster Griffin, what a find he has been. So for the Nationals to have 3 all-stars was a tremendous first half.
If somebody hadn't been paying attention to the Nats 48 and 49 season, at the All-Star break, is it as easy as just saying this is a really good baseball team with a terrible bullpen? Is that it? Is it that simple?
Well, you could boil it down to that. Now, are there things they could do better? Yes. Defensively, they struggled. They still have committed the most errors in the major leagues, but they've played better as the season has gone along in that respect. I think the starting pitching, has had at times some good things. I think, like we said, Foster Griffin, what a tremendous find that is. But credit to Blake Butera and the coaching staff. You had Zach Littell and Miles Michaelis struggle right out of the gate. But, going to the opener strategy, which is something the Nationals have never done in their history, has kind of maximized what they've been able to give the team. And so the Littell games and the Michaelis games where they're getting openers, those are games they have a chance to win late in games. So I think that the whole process of the new front office, the new coaching staff, the new manager, I think that's something that has to be in the positive column this season. And I just like the versatility of this offense. They're right near the top of the league in home runs, but they're near the top of the league in stolen bases too.
Right.
So it makes it a fun offense to watch, and that they can beat you in a number of ways. So it's not just not to simply say it's a great record. There's a lot of things that have gone into making the record what it is.
So they sit here at 48 and 49. It was a shame what happened over the weekend. You mentioned the Phillies series. Get a couple of those back, and you're even closer than 4 games out from that final spot. And there are a lot of teams in contention for that final wild card spot. But what would you hope that they would be thinking in terms of their mindset approaching the trade deadline? Do you need to be somewhere in terms of games out from a spot to behave differently? How does that all get handled here at the end of this month?
Yeah, I think they could go a number of different ways, Kevin. I mean, this is a key road trip. You've got the A's who dropped 9 in a row, and the Rockies who are at the bottom of the standings. So you've got to make some hay on this road trip, get back over 500, and then go into a homestand against Arizona and Toronto. Arizona's a contender in the National League. Toronto, last year's American League champion. And if you have a good 2 weeks, I think that that definitely could chart the course to this team trying to add to the bullpen. If they kind of tread water, I think that you could kind of see either way. You could see them buy and sell, or perhaps sell. And if they don't play well, I think then you'd see that they would sell. So I mean, it's totally up to these next 2 weeks. And so there are a number of different charts that you can courses you can chart depending on what they do. First over this road trip, then over the next homestand. So that's a hard question to answer right now. And I think Paul Taboni is open and waiting. Every time he's talked about it, he's kind of said, we'll wait and see where we are August 3rd. And obviously the next 2 to 2.5 weeks of baseball will tell us a lot.
That's an excellent point. Given these first 6 games out of the gate on the road against 2 teams struggling, these are the games that could really sort of drive that decision. What did you make of the Bob Nightingale USA Today report where he reported that the Nats were perhaps let everybody know that C.J. Abrams and James Wood were available during last winter for trade?
I mean, I don't really. Obviously, I think CJ. There was discussion a lot about CJ Abrams in the offseason.
Right.
The James Wood thing, I don't buy at all. To me, this is a franchise player that you have under control for, at that time, 5 more seasons. So I didn't put any stock in it at all. And I think with the first half that CJ Abrams has put together, you look at him and say, well, the next time the Nationals are a contending team, which is this year and hopefully next year, you'd like him to be a part of it. So I think how well he's played makes it that much harder to try to trade him.
Why has Foster Griffin been so good and come out of nowhere?
Well, he's a pitcher's pitcher. I mean, we didn't know a lot about him when he was signed. I mean, we heard he left the United States 3 years ago with 4 pitches and came back with 7. So apparently, he found those 3 pitches and he found a whole bunch of maturity. He had been injured. He had never really had much of a chance to establish his footing in the major league. So he goes over there. He has a chance to have success, finds out who he is as a pitcher and what works. And he's different. I mean, you saw what he did in the All-Star game. He had the hitters lunging at his changeup, and then, they think he's going to go away. Then he busts him inside with a cutter. He can be a different guy every time he faces a hitter. And that's why I think Blake Butera has shown the confidence to allow him to face a lineup 3 times, occasionally 4 times, pitch into the 7th or 8th inning, because it's not like he's the same pitcher in the 1st inning and the 5th inning. He can attack a hitter so many different ways, and that makes him very unique among today's pitchers. He doesn't wow you with velocity, but he can pinpoint all of his pitches to the different quadrants of the strike zone, stay out of the middle of the plate, change speeds. And if you're a hitter trying to guess, it's a lot easier to guess when a guy throws 2 pitches than when a guy throws 7. Odds are you're going to be wrong if you're guessing with Foster Griffin.
How many pitches did Anibal Sanchez have when he was pitching for the Nats in 2019?
Well, it felt like 5. I mean, he had the changeup and he had the dead fish changeup. He had like this.
Yeah.
Max Scherzer said it best. He said Anibal Sanchez changed speeds on his changeup better than any pitcher he ever saw. Now he could mix in, a sinker and a slider, but the beauty of Anibal was he could throw you a changeup at 75 and then a changeup at 65 and then a changeup at 71. And so the changeup was the kind of 3 different varieties of it, even though he called it the same thing. And by the way, back when Anibal Sanchez was with the Nationals, the sweeper didn't exist. That used to be a slider. We've renamed everything. So the fact that we have more names allows Griffin to have 7 pitches, because 4 years ago, if he was throwing that same sweeper, it'd be called a slider.
Yeah, we're talking to Dave Jagler, of course. You guys recognize the voice. I was wondering, because when he started to pitch well, Tommy and Livero and I were talking, and I said, who does he remind you of? Who's the comp? Like, this guy is clearly pitching more with his brain than anything else. And I'm wondering if you've comped him to anybody.
Well, I mean, Sanchez would be pretty good in that. The other in Nationals history is Livan Hernandez, because Livan, the tail end of his career, when he first came up with the Marlins, he threw gas. But when we saw him in 2005, and then the later iteration of Levo, which was like 2010, 2011, he was a pitcher's pitcher, and he would throw that lollipop curveball, and then he'd paint the outside corner with a sinker at 89. And while 89 might not seem like a lot, if you were looking for the 60, the 89 would look like 109, and that's what Foster Griffin does. So I mean, kind of a left-handed version of Levo is one that jumps out to me.
I just always remember that performance against the Cardinals in the NLCS from Sanchez. I don't know if anything hit much more than 82 or 83 miles per hour in that game, and he was brilliant. Give me a player that you think it's not technically the second half, but it's referred to as the second half of the season. Give me a player that you think is on the verge of making a much bigger contribution than he has already.
Well, I mean, I'd like to see that be Dalen Lyle. I mean, you look at what Luis Garcia Jr. and Curtis Meade have done. They've been a nice complement to the Wood-Abrams duo. Lyle, with what he did last September, looked like he was on the verge of a breakout, and Lyle's had some moments this year, but I think just kind of consistently, he's probably been a little bit disappointed in the total output, but we know it's in there. We saw it at the tail end of last season. Now this is his first full year in the major leagues. Teams have a book on him. Can he make the adjustment and get back to being the dynamic player that he was at the end of last season? He's made tremendous strides defensively, but I think the impact offensively, if he can have the second half that he had last year, that'd be huge to have him bat behind Abrams. Because right now you have that Wood-Abrams pocket 1 through 4, which, if it's Garcia against a righty, Meade in there, that's a pretty stout portion of the lineup. If you can get deeper in that lineup with Lyle and Cruz, and Ruiz has done a nice job at the bottom of the lineup, then you have the speed down there. If Lyle can have a big second half, I think this team will continue to be at or near the top of the league in runs scored.
Be fun to see them in contention when we hit September. Real quickly on the All-Star game from the other night, what do you think the future of this game is?
Yeah, interesting you say that. I turned to I'm like, I was frankly kind of losing interest once Foster Griffin was done. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, I think it's still a good exhibition, and there's a lot to it. It's just that particular game, not a lot happened. There were so many strikeouts. There was not a ton of action or exciting plays. I mean, I think the game is in a good place with it. I mean, I like that we went away from putting the home field advantage on it. I mean, it is an exhibition game, and you like to see the best players. And I like the fact that the starters get 2 at bats, the reserves get in there, and so I like seeing all the different players. I think it's fine as it is. I think this was just a one-off that there wasn't a whole lot of action. Too many strikeouts. It was kind of a snoozer after the top of the first inning. Much more excitement at the end of the home run derby. But I think over the course of time, it's still the top All-Star game of the 4 major sports. I mean, I don't even watch whatever they do flag football now, and I've never been a big fan of the NBA All-Star game. But I think baseball still has the best All-Star game. It's just the other night was not its best.
Yeah, I think that's true, by the way. But I no Shohei Ohtani. You've got to get the superstars in the game to not opt out of this thing.
Right.
That
when you look
to
at
me
that,
is
and you look at no Aaron Judge because he was hurt. I mean, the Ohtani thing.
No Skeens, right?
Ohtani was going to be in there if not. His knee was flaring up. But you're absolutely right. If guys bow out of the game, then that's not a good thing. I mean, I still think though it was a good showcase for some of the young stars who were there.
All right. I'll ask you a question you may not want to answer, but just give me trade deadline couple days before. How many games out of the wild card third spot do they need to be for them to be more buyer than anything else?
Probably 2 to 3. I mean, what are they now?
Okay.
Like 4? So
they're 4 now.
Gaining ground on where they are and over 500. I mean, I think if they have, again, like I said before, if they can dominate this road trip and have a good homestand, I think they're right there and can make Paul Tabone's decisions difficult. I mean, I don't think anyone has assumed that the Nationals would be in position to be asking for folks in trade. So I hope this is a great couple of weeks of baseball and that forces the hand.
Have a safe trip. I appreciate you doing this.
All right, Kevin. My pleasure.
At Dave Jagler, everybody on X. Ben Standig will join us next. Ben's with us a day early because I think he's going to be traveling tomorrow. He's written about Sonny Styles, Antonio Williams, Washington's rookies. I'll ask you what typically is kind of an early training camp question today. If I told you that Washington ended up with a rookie of the year, and obviously the two choices more likely than not would be Sonny Styles and Antonio Williams, which of the two would you pick right now? I think you can make a case for both, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously with Jaden Daniels, if he has the year that he had in 24, and sort of Antonio Williams it gets like all the Noah Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, De'Ami Brown of that year, Jameson Crowder,
right,
that he would have a huge year. But I mean, I guess I would still say Styles. I mean, obviously, for the defensive rookie of the year, he was the number 7 pick. He's going to get a lot of attention, and the way he is, built, his highlight reel could be pretty spectacular. So, and plus, he's the one who is more than likely going to be in the lineup most every play. So I would say him, but sure, if Antonio Williams is able to, cobble together all those random parts and turn it into his own stats, then yeah, that would be pretty good.
ESPN's Ben Solak, like 2 weeks ago, had 10 predictions for the 2026 NFL season, and his number 10 prediction was that Antonio Williams from Washington would win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, that came out of nowhere. He would be the lowest picked player offensively to ever win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Anquan Bolden in 2003 was the 54th pick in the draft and won Rookie of the Year offensively. Williams is the 71st pick. But he basically makes the case that it's a year that doesn't have an obvious quarterback. Mendoza may not even start for the Raiders for the first few games or maybe the first half of the season. Ty Simpson's not going to play unless Matt Stafford gets hurt. And even if he does get hurt, whoever the backup is, who is the backup in LA? Is it Simpson? I don't even know. But his point was you don't have quarterbacks to choose from this year. And the opportunity right now in the Washington wide receiver room with a healthy Jaden Daniels, to your point, creates kind of this unique opportunity for somebody like him.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, the logic is sound, especially, I mean, you can also throw in like Jeremiah Love might be like an obvious name, but the fit doesn't really suggest that he's going to get such a workload that he's going to be very high up in the Rookie of the Year, or, at least not a runaway leader. So, yeah, I mean, the logic makes sense for sure. I just need to see, we got to see how much he's even going to play, let alone enough. But, yeah, the opportunity is absolutely there. So, yeah, from that perspective, I totally get where he's coming from.
Stetson Bennett is the other quarterback currently. Jimmy Garoppolo is not on that roster. So, where is Jimmy Garoppolo? Am I blanking on where Jimmy Garoppolo is?
No, he's still a free agent.
He's still a free agent.
He might retire. So
right.
I don't know.
So right now, behind Stafford is Stetson Bennett, who's got to be like 38 years old now because he came out 2 years ago as about a 32-year-old rookie or whatever he was, and then Ty Simpson are the two in LA as backups. All right. So. Did you have any sort of reaction to where Terry McLaurin came in on the ESPN rankings of wide receivers, essentially coming in at 20th overall?
I guess people ESPN talk to don't like 30-year-old receivers either.
Well, Devontae Adams at 33 was number 10 on the list. So there was that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Seems a little low, but I didn't see the whole list, but I mean, how it is. I mean, you take numbers, I don't know, 10 through 20, throw them in a hat, pull out an order, and call it a day. So if that's where they had it, so be it. Obviously, as we know, so much of these things are recency bias. And last year, the first time he had the injuries, the team was horrendous. His final numbers, for just looking at those, obviously don't stand out compared to most years where he's getting 1,000 yards. So, it doesn't surprise me, I guess, that he's down there. Again, I'd have to see who else is there to say, oh, this is ridiculous. But, again, if you give it another day,
somebody else puts up another list, probably you'll be somewhere else.
So let me just answer the question for you. I don't really care because I didn't have to host a show during All-Star break on radio. That's fine. By the way, the Defensive Rookie of the Year odds, the consensus right now, Reuben Bain's actually the favorite with David Bailey, followed by Arvell Reese, and then Sonny Styles at plus 850 on average to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. All right. There was one other question I was going to ask. Oh, the other sort of training camp questions, and we'll probably circle back to these in a few weeks. But I was having this conversation yesterday with Mitch Tischler on my podcast, and we're just talking about the defensive players and all of the new players and who's going to emerge as, the guy that they definitely got right or the guys that they definitely got right. And I basically just said, all right, I'll cut to the chase here and ask the question that you usually ask in early August. Who's going to lead the team in sacks this year?
I would guess Odafe Owe would be my best guess. It's still going to be interesting to see how the workload plays out. Obviously, they gave him the contract they gave him. He should be out there plenty, but Chason is going to get his, and we'll see when Dorrance Armstrong is able to get back. So, those three, is it going to be sort of an equal split? Is Owe definitely getting more? But, I would say him. I don't know if there's, I'm not going to pick any of the tackles. I mean, if Deron Payne has this contract year resurgence again, so be it, but I can't do that. So I would say Owe for me would be the call. Chason would be obviously number 2.
Yeah, I think you got the 3 that would be the favorites in some order: Owe, Chason, and Dorrance Armstrong. I think, there are some people who've forgotten that he was their best defensive player when he got hurt in Week 7 against the Cowboys and missed the rest of the season. We'll see how he comes back. All right, I know that you wanted in your text to me yesterday, you wanted to talk a little bit about the Wizards on our spot today. You wrote a story about Trae Young and, the fact that they've already extended him. Let me just ask you real quickly where you are today on whether or not Anthony Davis will get extended. There is a report out there. Somebody sent this to me during the show, a report that the Wizards are not going to trade Anthony Davis. I mean, they pretty much said that all along, but do you think that they'll extend him and make the case against or for?
Yeah, that report was from some guy named Fred Katz at The Athletic. What a loser.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my guy. I'm kidding. That's kind of what the gist has been, that they're saying they're not going to. Everybody can lament about the Trae Young thing. At a minimum, he's 27, still in his prime. We can debate, the overpay and this and the other, but he's a guy that you feel pretty good about by the end of the 4-year contract that you're still going to be getting at least reasonable value of what it is. And for a 33-year-old who's constantly breaking down with injuries, that's a whole different proposition. Furthermore, Anthony Davis is going to make $115 million combined the next 2 years, something along those lines, which is insane. So, I don't even know what the contract would look like. I understand a max contract, but I don't think that's coming for him from anybody. If you look at where the league is right now, after what we just witnessed here with the Jaylen Brown.
They got in a trade, they barely had to give up anything for him, relatively speaking.
Right. For that, Trae Young, but in terms of the money, we saw this was a year where teams seem to be balking at the idea of taking on that kind of money, even for a guy like Jaylen Brown, who's obviously, in theory, one of the better players on all that. So I don't think there's a max out there for Anthony Davis. I've been wrong before with these contracts. So that's why I don't know what the Wizards do here exactly. Davis is doing all the right things. He has said, he admitted, hey, I wasn't very happy about coming here. I wasn't really sure what to think because the Wizards have a terrible reputation. But since I got here, they've kind of changed my tune. He shows up for DeBonta's summer league game. He was there for Trae Young's press conference. I was in the room for both of those things, and he's doing all the right things. And there's been, despite everybody saying he wants out, I've not heard that. So the question is that because he thinks he's getting a deal or not? I don't think he's going to get a max deal. If there's a way to sort of,
give him another year or something and all that, and they think it's worth it and it's not going to screw up their cap space. Okay, maybe, but I don't think he's going to get a bigger deal from these guys. I think they'll just wait and see where they are and then go from there.
I mean, I think just thinking about this thing logically, or at least with my logic, the market for paying Anthony Davis doesn't exist today because of the fear that everybody has, including a recency bias because he didn't play last year, and that he needs to prove something. He needs to prove that he can still be Anthony Davis in the NBA. And so I would think that you could certainly make the case to him, look, we're not going to do this in August. It's too risky for us, but we believe in you. And if you go out and perform the way we think you can go out and perform, obviously there's a player option for him next year, but we can talk about this during the season when you're averaging 24 and 13 and 2.5 block shots per game, and we're 8 games over 500. I think the fear is, from my standpoint, is this guy shown so little enthusiasm at times for playing beyond minimal injuries, but this may be the first time where he really has something to prove. He should be, incentivized to go out and prove that he can still be the same player.
No, 100%. I mean, look, I know that Trae Young just opted out of his $49 million player option because I guess he knew he was getting what he was getting.
Right.
Again, I don't think Anthony Davis is going to get that deal from anybody, and his deal is $60-something million next year. Like, I don't see him opting out of that. So for the Wizards, look, like you said, let's play this out. I mean, there's a world where he plays well, and the Wizards before the trade deadline are like, hey, we are still a good step or two away. He's going to, his timeline doesn't really mesh with where we're at. He's helped our kids already, so let's move him for some picks or whatever. Sure, that's certainly possible. But yeah, like you said, I think it just doesn't make any sense to me why you would do this. And that's the thing. Again, I think there's justification for the Trae Young deal, but it kind of blows up if you give Anthony Davis a deal that then starts eating into the cap space you're going to need for the younger guys when they start, coming up for extension. So I would be surprised, but when it comes to the NBA funny money, I'm never shocked about anything.
At Ben Standig on X, subscribe to his Substack covering our teams, both the Commanders and the Wizards. He's got a podcast called Last Man Standing, and he joins us twice a week. I'll ask you the question that we did with callers earlier in the show, sort of off the English loss to Argentina in the World Cup semifinals, where, they essentially had, in soccer, almost the game in hand to a certain degree, up 1-0 very late, and they gave up 2 goals over a 7-minute period. Is there a game for you in your sports rooting lifetime that stands out as the most gut-wrenching kind of snagging defeat from the jaws of victory loss for a team that you rooted for?
Oh, boy. Well, I'm trying to think in those terms. I mean, this is maybe not the exact same, but I was at the Final Four when Maryland was playing Duke, and they had a 20-something point lead.
22-point lead. Yeah.
In the first half. And then, obviously it's a long way to go, and Duke's Duke and all that. But the fact that they it's not they just didn't win. They got, kind of rolled over in the second half.
They lost by 10. Yeah, there was a 32-point swing from late, later first half to the end of the game.
Yeah, I was in Minneapolis for that with a bunch of different people. My cousin was there with some people, and when the game ended and we were all in such a daze, my cousin left without thinking about it because he was so distraught. What the hell just happened here? So there's that. I mean, this isn't the exact same thing, but when Georgetown, Michael Jordan hits the shot and Fred Brown throws it away, and at that age, I was not ready to. I had not had calluses built up yet as a sports fan, so that was a complete whoa, what just happened here? And obviously that Fred Brown play still gets played today. So those are the couple that come to mind.
Thank you. Have a safe trip back. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. See you.
Ben Standig, everybody. There's news related to our football team and the uniforms that they're going to wear against the teams that they play next year. I will break it down for you when we come back. I do want to mention that we do have our Waldorf Honda Twitter poll of the day up as we speak. Max just put it up, and he asked the question that I asked Ben. Our Waldorf Honda Twitter poll of the day: which Commanders draftee has a better shot at winning Rookie of the Year, Sonny Styles or Antonio Williams? It's actually, I think, going to be heavy on Antonio Williams. However, with that said, the opportunities, heavy on Sonny Styles, excuse me. I think the opportunities for Antonio Williams, especially if they don't add another receiver, with Jaden Daniels upright and healthy, could be meaningful. We'll see. There were a couple of receivers picked before him in the draft, including somebody maybe they would have picked at number 7 had he still been there, Carnell Tate. If you're interested in new windows, please give Window Nation just a shot. I'm just asking you to allow them to come out to your home and give you a free in-home estimate. It takes an hour or less. It'll be scheduled for when it's convenient for you. You schedule it by calling them at 866-90-NATION or heading to windownation.com. Please mention my name as to where you heard about Window Nation. They'll send their best salesperson out who will do an estimate, walk around your house in an hour or less. You'll actually find out which windows in your home need to be replaced, which ones are too old, which ones are letting too much air in during the summer, too much of that cool air out. And you're losing money because of it. You're paying higher air conditioning bills in the summer. You're paying higher heating bills in the winter with older windows. If this is something you've given thought to, just give Window Nation a chance to come out, walk around your home in an hour or less, and give you a free estimate. If you choose to move forward with them, this is a one-day installation process, all right? And your home actually looks better than when they began. And you'll get 50% off everything with no money down, no payments, and no interest charged for 2 years. 50% off all window styles. They have over 1,500 for you to choose from. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
tengo en el palo, pero qué trasero que tienen, por Dios, por no decir otra cosa, viene Messi, va Messi, mete el centro, ¡gol! ¡Lautaro de mi vida! ¡Lautaro viejo más! ¡Vamos Argentina! ¡Vamos Argentina, carajo! Siempre hay que confiar. No termina hasta que no termina. No termina hasta que no termina. Nunca hay que dejar de creer. Argentina 2. Argentina 2. Inglaterra 1. Lautaro viejo más. Argentina en mi corazón estamos juntos. Siempre juntos. Argentina 2-1. 47 minutos, Juan Pablo. Vamos Argentina todavía. No se puede tener tanto culo. No es Argentina 2-1.
This was so good. I'm retweeting it right now at Kevin Sheehan DC. Argentine. It's not Argentinian, right?
Argentine.
Announcer Pablo Giralt on the call of Messi's game winner at 92 minutes, 90 plus 2 of stoppage time. The video of it is sensational. I'm telling you, I've always been bothered by people who get upset with Homer play-by-play guys. That's their job. They're calling games for their country. They're calling games for their team. This isn't a national broadcast. This isn't objectivity. This isn't, you can't show bias. Hometown Crews, Buck, one of the all-time greats in this town, obviously, on TV. Dak, not possible, Darvin Ham. Pablo Giralt's call of Messi's it wasn't his game winner. It was his incredible pass for the header that gave Argentina a 2-1 win over England. All right. Guess what, everybody? Uniform talk, just briefly, but the team announced today something that I've actually wondered about going back to when they unveiled their new uniforms, and that is, would they be primarily a white at-home team or a dark at-home team? The championship teams of Joe Gibbs, they were white at home. They didn't wear dark jerseys at home. Well, we have our answer today. They are going to be primarily a dark burgundy, talking about championship burgundy top team at home, with one exception, and I think it makes sense based on their schedule. They're going to wear early in the season when it could still be very hot, with their only, it's not their only 1:00 game, but a 1:00 game against the Giants. They are going to wear their white tops. Every other home game will be burgundy tops, with the exception of 2. Their alternate black uniforms will be worn at home against Cincinnati on Monday Night Football and late in the season against Atlanta. So got that. Burgundy primarily at home, with the exception of the Giant game at home in week 5, where they will wear white, and the 2 alternate Hailrazor black tops at home against Cincinnati in week 11 and 15 week Atlanta. I actually have the whole schedule. Week 1, they'll be in white. Now, they have not determined which pants they're going to wear: burgundy, white, or gold. All 3 are options. So they're going to mix the pants. We may see some burgundy on gold. Obviously that was the Bruce Allen era for here and his father's era in Washington. The Joe Gibbs era was always burgundy with white pants, white with burgundy pants, none of the burgundy on burgundy or white on white. But the team announced that they would not announce yet what pant color they'll be wearing. But week 1, they'll be wearing primarily white, all right, at Philadelphia. Week 2, at Dallas, they'll be in burgundy because the Cowboys wear white at home. Week 3, they'll be in burgundy at home for Seattle in the home opener. Week 4, the London game, they will be in burgundy tops. Week 5 against the Giants at home in white. And then week 6 at San Francisco in white. Week 7, they will be wearing, that's a bye week. Week 8, they'll be at home against Philadelphia in burgundy. Rams burgundy. The Giants on the road burgundy, And then, do you really care about this? Week 11, alternate blacks against Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. That is, I think, Thanksgiving week. Week 12, white at Arizona. Week 13, white at Tennessee. Week 14, burgundy at home against Houston. Week 15 against Atlanta and black. And then week 16, burgundy at Minnesota. Well, Minnesota will wear white at home. Week 18, burgundy at home against the Cowboys. I actually wish they'd wear the white jerseys at home against the Cowboys, forcing the Cowboys to wear their blues, personally. But it looks like 9 games in burgundy, 6 in white, and then 2 in black, if you were wondering. That's the count right there. Warren Sharp put something out today. For whatever reason, I think we've seen this before, but he put it out just an hour ago. And I think it's important based on last year and some of the narratives that got tossed around last year, especially about the very few games Jaden played in. But the highest percentage of receiver error causing incompletions last year. Talked about this because of the revolving door of receivers last year in Washington. It was a 3-ring circus in some of these games. The Seattle game in particular on Sunday night, when they just had a lot of guys out there that just weren't familiar with the playbook, familiar enough with the playbook, familiar enough with playing with each other. And it was not conducive to high quarterback play or functional offensive play. Even though the truth is, offensively, that was the much lesser of the problems because defense was abysmal. But the highest percentage of receiver error causing incompletions, Jacksonville led the league, followed by Denver, Cleveland, New York, the Giants, and then Washington. Washington had the 5th highest percentage of receiver error causing incompletions last year. The receiver errors, if I recall, Warren Sharp defines receiver errors as drop passes, as passes that should have been caught with both feet in bounds, but they only got 1 foot in bounds, and with deflections that should have been caught, not necessarily ruled drops. And I forget with respect to sort of route running, whether or not that's factored in. I don't know how he would factor that in necessarily. But anyway, it was a disaster last year offensively when it came to receivers for sure, because they just didn't have enough of their regulars. All right. What are we doing here? Is Chris in?
We're going to find out over the next 5 minutes, just along with everybody else.
Okay. So Chris Russell's supposed to be in. If he isn't, I might be back for a few minutes until he gets in. I do want everybody to know Window Nation is offering 50% off everything they sell window-wise. 50% off all window styles. They have over 1,500 window styles with the opportunity to pay nothing for 2 years. No money down, no payments monthly, and no interest charged for 2 years. It all starts with a free in-home estimate. 866-90-NATION to schedule a free in-home estimate. And really, that's where it starts. It's free. There's no risk. They don't obligate you to anything. They don't pressure you into making a decision. They'll come to your home. They'll leave you with a quote, and then they'll leave you alone. But to get that quote, to get that free in-home estimate, 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. I promise you, you mention my name, they will get it right. They'll take good care of you. You'll have a great product, and you won't pay for it for 2 years. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.